Why I Replaced Einstein, Part 2. Copyrighted May 22nd, 2015. Simi Valley, California, 93063, USA, all rights reserved. I didn't mention that, and I started with Part 1. I was interrupted when I retaped. I didn't mention the copyright. I put it in the defining comments. And also, in reference to Part 1, I started to mention about a humorous, in my opinion, is when Enrico Fermi came from Italy to the U.S., he came over with two other great scientists. One was Emilio Segre, who I became friends with, and I'm going to mention so that I don't then forget that of all the illustrious that I can say I was a friend of and conferred in theoretical mathematical physics was Emilio Segre. I consider him the best, or definitely one of the best, as far as his work and him as a illustrious gentleman. And then the other was Ernesto Piccioni. He was kind of bombastic, and maybe he had a right to be, because he was suing anybody that wouldn't mention that he was an applied physicist and that he had done some of the original work that others were working on. And so at his home, he won, in my opinion, as to could you find like the a particle that is the universal particle. And of course I said I'm a theoretician and I've got concepts. This was a few years ago, and now this century to into the 25th century. And that in my opinion, I believe in creation. Inert matter just doesn't create itself. There had to be in this nature a supernatural force to create this nature. And those who are believers say, well, that's God. And then I also mentioned that about Einstein being, of course, a plagiarist, and those that he plagiarized. And now, of course, they were H.A. Lorentz. I don't know if I mentioned their first name, but then there was, I think, Henry Poincaré, and I think it was Philip Leonard, and of course, then there was Olinto de Pretto, capital D, capital P-R-E-T-T-O. He put forward E equals mv squared, which Einstein stole. Absolutely proved that. And then there's his cousin, Michael Basso, who helped Einstein get to work in the Swiss Patent Office. And Einstein included him in his 1905 papers. So they can't say he didn't mention any reference. Yes, two of them. They have Oliva Merrick. His wife was a mathematician and worked for Professor Philip Leonard, who put forward the photoelectric effect in 1900. And then there's Herman Minkowski, a mathematician who did the key work as far as the 1905 papers to make sure they were correct. And there's David Hilbert, who actually the top one of the top mathematicians in the world. He put forward the field equations for general relativity, sent Einstein a copy, and then Einstein gave a little lecture in the class, and they said, oh, Einstein, that's his work. No, he plagiarized anything he ever did. And the worst was E equals mv squared. Now they say E equals mc squared of Olinto de Preto. And I mentioned that in order to really complete part one. And then I'm going to try to concise, because in referencing on the right margin, there was some quite, I say, explosive exposés regarding Einstein and others. And then I found that back in 2011, I put in 4 parts titled Why I Replaced Einstein. So when preparing this, I fell asleep, I think, about 3, maybe 4 times. I want to put first the emphasis of the highest possible considerations in the discipline of philosophy and theology, and then maybe cosmology, and then maybe theoretical mathematical physics. You understand? So as I prepare it, this is trying to recall what I've maybe already put forward. And one of them had, I think, about 1,800 something views. That surprised me. I didn't know I ever had that many, because I get so few that when you're at that few, they don't let anybody, practically nobody knows who you are or what you are. So I just make the videos, and if anybody wants to, if anybody finds them, fine. And I spent, I think, $35 on something about how to make yourself more shown on the internet, and I have never used it. So, all right, let's get to any other notes I have. Of course, I had mentioned that towards the end of part 3, and trying to rush to get it done, because they used to, if I went over 15 minutes, they used to say you exceeded the limit and wouldn't put it on the internet. I'd have to start all over again. But now they allow up to 30 minutes, I think I see. And some of them are even an hour or something. So YouTube has a better policy as far as you presenting something, especially if it's of value, for more than 15 minutes. And I thank them for that. In fact, they were real good until Google bought them out, and then Google, all my tapes disappeared, and Google said they couldn't find them. Fill out a form, and they wouldn't, refused to even answer the form. You can't call them. Many others have had difficulty with Google in reference to their work and trying to get a copy back of their work. All right, now part 2. Now in part 2, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mention right at the start that for the general public, if you see something on TV, well, yeah, they are supposed to check and recheck if it's correct in their sources and so forth. But they have to get attention so that you watch their program. And if you watch their program and the ratings are high, then they can get a higher amount for their time. for commercials so they can make more money for themselves and their employees. All right, that's business. So if you hear something, maybe you ought to, maybe you ought to know the basic physics, and the basic mathematics, so that you hear it and you say, well, yeah, I know the basic, or you can reference it, and you can reference my tapes and my work, and then say, this is what it is. And if they say, no, you tell them this is official. This is Doc C, PhD company. I'm referencing him, and it's official. That's the way it is. And if they try to hassle you, say, don't hassle me. Go challenge old Doc. You understand? That's when I decided maybe and say that you just look up my videos on various subjects. Especially I've written as expose editor. Absolutely expose editor. And I even they want maybe entertainment. Well, yeah, I like music, and the old adage that while I'm in the shower I croon a tune, and I used to try to imitate Bing Crosby, and then maybe some of the other good singers. And the one I finally tried, and the first time I ever taped it by referencing the lyrics. I had a complete copy of the lyrics where I could look at them. I did it complete the first time without a mistake, and it came about the best I ever recorded any song. I don't know where that is. A lot of them now, I noticed they don't put the URL up there anymore. See, you can put the URL and you can retrace it. Now you have to go by the title. Well, there's a title. Some of the titles are the same or so close. So they keep either on purpose or accidentally making it more difficult for good work to be able to reference the good work and who did the good work. Now, but you reference Doc C, PhD company. My channel is Doc1 PhD1CO is my YouTube channel. And I get a list of what I've presented. And then you have a reference on maybe the best work or representation of the subject matter being discussed. So I have here one of my copies, and it's years ago. They say, oh yeah, you're right, the world's wrong. And it's Correcting Einstein by Doc C, PhD company, copyrighted. It's officially published in 2008. And they would be a collector's item. You email me. It's $50 for really it'd be a collector's item, and I will send you a copy, and it has a lot of explanations of how this universe functions, and both explaining and in mathematical physics, so that you can comprehend. Now, that's the front cover. The back cover, I have the chronology of mathematical physics. And you see, some work I don't mention, even though it's maybe 50 plus or minus years old, because it's not still public. And they've taken almost all of my work, and many of them have become big names and made money. And as I said, on the right margin, there were some explosive exposés about these fellas, that they're frauds, biggest names and so forth. Well, I know that. One of them used to go by my office to go see a friend. You go right by it, walking distance, right by my office, and then come back over my office to go back to his country, then print a book about what work I had completed. And he became famous and rich, and that's the way they did it. Another fella, there was a kind of a rally. I think it was against the Vietnam War, and it was outdoors near the airport, and I went to it, and I brought some of my top work, and I had it hidden under my sweater, and in fact on my shirt. It was kind of a nice warm day, and a man, he was a college man, about half my age, came and they stood right next to me, him and three girls. Well, I thought it'd be a good idea to get you a little sociable and make it at least three girls and two gentlemen. So we were talking, and then he said, well, he is a theoretical physicist. Oh, well, might have been a coincidence, and all that crowd. He comes all the way from Central California. They came, standing next to me, and all right. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I have some work then that I'll show you. And I showed it to him and explained it to him, and he has become tremendously famous using that work. An absolute true story. How can I prove it? The man's age, the type of work that he what he did on his off hours, etc. You see, and there's not a coincidence. So I'm going to just mention them to the general public. Some basic formulas that you can refer to, look them up, and then if somebody talks about something, and then I'll explain relativity and what about space-time that they toss around. Oh, gee, space-time. No, and I'll try not to forget to come back to that topic. Okay. Now, you have, say, chronologically, x prime equals x. And what am I talking about, Doc? That's important. See, I tell you things that are important, in my opinion, because that's how the Egyptians built their pyramid, from bottom up. They would work out a congruent, that is, the sides match the angles. If you put one on the other, on the top, you only see one. It's called congruent in plane geometry. They realized that they could have their equipment and their employees work that way and duplicate the base of their pyramid. Now, what about as the pyramid becomes smaller? Well, now they go to where they're similar in geometry. and Euclid geometry, centuries old. And they would go to where it's similar. In other words, the geometric figure is exactly the same, but it is either proportionally, say, 3/4 of the original or 1 1/4 of the original. Usually then with the pyramid, they came up and made it, say, like 9/10. They came in one block. Well, how did they get it so level? You hear all kinds of stories and experts. Well, they realized that if you flooded the level they were on, you built either a double form for the block, or you build just the outside wall, and then either just flood it, or you have something to cover the sand, and you flood that. And then when you flood it, and it comes up a certain height, they had employees all around the outside mark that level. Now they either the water drains into the sand or they drain the water, and they've got level marks all the way around at a similar square, say 9/10 to one below it. You understand? And they did that in steps. How did they get the blocks up there? In my opinion, they had a great many number of employees pull, and as they pulled and rolled up, they would put something behind the rollers underneath so it wouldn't roll back until they got it to that level. Because they sure as heck didn't have huge cranes, yet they were able to build these pyramids. How? Well, that's my opinion. Now, but on x prime equals x, and similarity then, where x prime will equal n over x. If x is 10, maybe n would be 9. You can see, so now, then you have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is powerful, powerful. This is the Pythagorean theorem, where he put forward that if you square the two sides, a and b, the sum of those two squares will equal the square of c, the hypotenuse. That is powerful in the Pythagorean theorem. And then you have the trigonometry, which may have actually came first, in that when you had a square, as they're coming up with their square, if they go to the diagonal, the two sides are equal. Well, if 4 angles are 360 and one is 90, and you split that, it has to be 45. So the tangent of the 45-degree angle is 1. Do you understand? Because you have A and B are equal. The tangent equals the opposite over the adjacent. Now, what about if it's not square? Well, now you get towards Galileo, where you raise the inclined plane, and when he got to a measurement where side A to the hypotenuse was side A to C is 1/2. You're not using the tan, you're using the sine now. Sine equals opposite over the hypotenuse is the sine. And the sine of 30 degrees. He would roll a ball down and go up the other plane, and he would match it and have two planes, and saw that if this rolled up 10 meters, when it came down, it rolled up the other one 10 meters, if he had the planes the same and the angle the same. Do you understand? So the sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. That's a powerful true. I tell you things that are true, that hold, no matter what anybody says about anything. Now, then you have a circle. Well, the circumference is said to be 2 pi r. That is, you take the radius and you start marking it off around the circumference, and they found that if you multiply it by the Greek symbol pi, which is the Roman numeral Q with a top bar cross connecting them, that's pi, the Greek letter pi, and it's 3.1412. So that would give you the correct distance of a circle, and it holds true. Well, what about area? Well, if you have a square, the sides are the same. So it would be A times B. It would be AB, the area of a square. But if A and B are equal, it would be the same as saying A squared. Now, what about if you have where it's a circle? Well, there's still, find that use pi 3.1412, and the area equals pi r squared. So they take the radius and they mark it, and they mark it again, and that radius are equal, and if you multiply the radius by itself times pi, you get the area of a circle. Now, how could they prove that? Say, like the Egyptians or the early civilization filled something with sand. They'd have a square, and they could fill the square with water or sand and see how much it was, and then fill the circle. And when it matched, they say, yeah, they matched. They're not congruent. They're not the same geometric figure, but they're of equal quantity. And it comes out to A equals pi r squared. You see, they used their good intellect and to resolve how to build these huge structures that are there today. And some say, how did they do it? Well, this is my opinion. And it's from basic mathematics, basic physics, and mathematical physics. Now, what about volume? Well, they found that volume is 4/3 pi r cubed. And for me, that's an important expression, because I work with that in futuristic theoretical mathematical physics. Now, they then, by trial and error, work out how many times you can get combinations, and it's called NPR, permutations and combinations of n things taken r at a time. Now, Galileo found out what the force of gravity was, and then that d equals 1/2 gt squared. You know that. And if they talk about something, you say, well, let's see, how deep is this water well? Find a water well and you drop a stone. Well, gravity by Galileo was found to be 32 feet per second per second. So if you have 2 seconds of time, that would be d equals 1/2, 32 be 16, times 2 squared is 4. That would be 64 feet. You say, oh, that water well is 64 feet deep. I need to get a rope and bucket to get my water out of that water well. And see, that's a very important expression. D equals 1/2 gt squared. Then you get to the one that's really used because of its motion. Galileo said velocity equals distance over time. Now, before I forget, I will say, because it's 29 minutes, I don't want to have to do this over again. So I'm going to concise it. Now, you say, well, V there could be singular or more than one. It's called the Galileo's universal law of the addition of component velocities. And so you have velocity equals distance over time. Space is a distance. There's no such thing as space-time is one. No. Space is a distance. Time is time. I start with time because time is one. You use time to define time. Time is the centerline point of the Earth's mass, of the Earth's mass as it rotates on at that centerline of the Earth's mass, and as it rotates and orbits the sun. A day, a time of day and time of year. And you look at your wristwatch, and so time is an interval from the first time you look at it, t sub o, to the next time you look at it, t sub 1. During that interval, the Earth has rotated and orbited. But you go as far as time of day by its rotation, and there's 24 hours in a day. Do you see? As to the, when you say what time is it, and you say is what orbit, well then it's at a year's time. So you have to think, in my opinion, rationally what is really occurring. Not the way Einstein said. You got to think irrational and some mathematical schema. In my opinion, I doubt if he really knew what he was doing. All he cared about was getting that position, and he got in that position and we hype up and the hoopla and so forth. So now, important also is force and Galileo's 3 laws. There's every action equal opposite reaction. And the pendulum swings, keeps the same path, and they're equal arcs, and then they were able to get a pendulum clock. And you get where finally then they have Lorentz put forward where he's trying to say that the basic unit for all matter is the electron, because it's only 1/1837th of a proton. And you look at it this way, there's a neutron. And naturally, a neutron will shed and become an electron and a proton. Isn't that interesting? Now, if it does that naturally, is all of the mass then of the proton other electrons that are just still together? So, in my opinion, then, Lorentz, in trying to work out how this is, where you can say that all matter are electrons, he came up with his transformation equations. Then they had where the Michelson-Morley experiment, where they didn't detect any A-ether in space. So if there's no A-ether, then space is a void, void of anything. So it's interesting. I think it's even kind of laughable that they show Einstein that this void of his, and he shows he's got like a screen, and it's warped towards something, and he says that's gravity. The thing, it's space. There's not gravity. It's but a singular event, and his, not the world's, yours or mine, or science, his inertia. Well, Galileo put forth inertia. A body at rest stays at rest. A body in motion will continue in motion, and in that same path, unless acted upon by an exterior force. So inertia is a resultant of what something is doing, you see. But gravity is an attraction. But he says that gravity is but one little event in his inertia. And he emphasizes that. Not the world's or science's or yours or mine. His inertia. That's the way it is. Well, where did he get the screen where it warps? Where did he get the screen? And there's only one screen, and it'll warp in the direction he wants to. When there's a void, there's nothing there. And how does this void of his warp and so forth? There's nothing there. All of a sudden, he can get it to warp and bend and dip, and you see what I mean? So gravity is an attraction to center line of the mass. And that's what gravity is. And so time is time, an interval for center line of the Earth's mass. Space is a distance from here to there. And do you understand? And the two are not one the same. And then he only goes what x prime equals x minus vt over the square root of, well, I've proven that if you have to obey Galileo's law of the addition of component velocities, which is v equals plus or minus x prime equals x plus or minus vt, not over any other term. You don't need the other term. It's to detect a medium. So he uses the other term in his relativity when the other term is to detect that space is a void. Well, if space is a void, then you don't need any other term. You can go direct. That's why I say you have direct. Word is direct, and it comes out of inverse proportion. And I demonstrated that in one of my previous videos. So what am I saying? I'm saying that I will only try to discuss the best in the discipline of philosophy, in theology, in cosmology, and this is, otherwise I'll fall asleep. I mean, I got to be really, I have to be fair to myself. Like I was working on in 2010, before I think I got rudely interrupted by, I forget exactly now what, so much goes on, about the city of Moscow. In January, they have, instead of the Christmas season, they have the winter holiday time, and celebrating the ice skating and all that of winter. And I was working on where in the 25th century the entire city would be 85 degrees in the daytime, January, and about shirt sleeve, and about 75 degrees at night, sweater. And you say, well, what about all the cold and the snow? You could be gathered, and that would be extra as far as fusion energy, needing water, have it in a lake, which then could be a lake for recreation and fishing, for agriculture, and say, oh no, in the 25th century, I know it can be done. You would have the transportation organized so nobody would have exhaust. They could just get on, hop on, hop off of public transportation, go where they wanna. It is absolutely something that I think will be done in the 25th century. But I just say that because I was working on things in the 25th century and the last century. And I'm sure as I thought that this century, somebody would be man enough and honest enough and reciprocate enough that I would work with them and put forward certain concepts that they're trying. And this is me and my opinion. And I say, of course, to my sisters and brothers that I highly appreciate any acceptance of me and my opinions. And I, of course, of my work is mine. I should, by the laws of God and humanity, Constitution, Bill of Rights, obtain honors and reasonable financial compensation, of course. And that would be justice. And to all of those that are for that, to support me, I say thank you.